Welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going above and beyond the call of box office returns to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Nicole Finari.
And I'm Garret Schellenhammer.
And this week we're going to overanalyze...
Boy Erased.
Okay, Boy Erased, directed, written, and co-starring Joel Edgerton, is about the son of a Baptist preacher, played by Russell Crowe, who is forced to participate in a church-supported gay conversion program after being forcibly outed to his parents. Mother played by Nicole Kidman, and the boy Jared played by Lucas Hedges. What did you think?
What a heavy movie. That's where we need to start, is like, don't expect this to be fun. Don't expect this to be enjoyable. This is a very heavy movie with heavy content.
So this is an awkward one for me to review, and I'm just going to lay some stuff out front. Listeners have heard me complain about extreme violence in movies before. I don't handle things well. Like, I'm very sensitive to images, and I didn't read a single trigger warning. I'm going to put it in my messaging when this podcast goes out. There's a very graphic rape scene in this movie, and I pretty much never recovered from seeing it and spent the rest of the movie trying to hold it together so I didn't disrupt the experience for everybody else, but just basically kind of replaying it in my mind. So I was somewhat checked out, basically, through the second half of this movie. Like, I couldn't...
Well, it wasn't even the second half. We're talking this rape scene is maybe 20 minutes into the movie.
I just couldn't get past it. It was too real. And it wasn't like they cut away. Like, they filmed the whole thing, and then there's, like, a scene where and then it ends, and the rapist basically tries to gaslight his victim into believing that he's the victim. Like, it's just... It was really bad, and I'm not exaggerating when I say I left the movie, I made it out of the theater so they could clean it up. I sat down in the lobby and probably sobbed for 10 minutes before I could pull myself together to leave. So this is a hard one for me to evaluate from that perspective. Like, it just really, really hit me hard. And I will say this so people don't, take this the wrong way. This is not, thankfully, based on personal experience. It didn't trigger a memory for me, but God forbid if you have been a victim of sexual assault, I just don't know how. I can't, in good conscience, I just don't, please don't see this movie. I can't imagine how it would feel if you'd been in that situation. I think it would be incredibly traumatic.
Yeah. And I want to follow up that, well, this is a hard movie to watch. I'm not sure I'm recommending to see it in theaters. I'm also not sure.
Yeah, it might be easier on a small screen. I don't disagree with you there. Yeah.
I'm also not recommending you see it by yourself. The content of the movie is not easy to digest. And I mean, I'm sure some people out there are like, oh, whatever right now. But really, I want to emphasize... the amount of anxiety it caused in me as someone who has lived through kind of a similar situation watching this movie. I knew going in I would be a little more triggered than most people just because of the content of the movie. I was not expecting the content of the sexual assault, the physical violence that was portrayed to one of the young men who was beaten with a Bible. Like, I've read the book. I was ready for all of it. It just was a whole different setting, seeing it in real time. And I guess that we'll get into how well the acting, I think, speaks to the acting in a minute. But I want you to go into this with a friend if you're going to go see it in theaters. But I also think it's something you could watch at home. But I also recommend taking some time afterwards to process and not just let it go by. Because even as a movie's sake, this brought up several issues of suicide, of rape, of identities and homosexuality, and of relationships with parents and religion and homosexuality. And I think it just needs to be labeled as such. And I agree with Nicole. You know, we were waiting. It didn't even come to DC its first week in release, which was a little surprising considering DC has one of the highest per capita populations of homosexuals. But I don't know that I can recommend this movie as just like a good movie. I think the content is needed, and I think it's one of those that is one of the rites of passage that you need to see to understand what people are going through. But I don't know that I'm going to recommend it as a good movie.
Yeah, I just want to cap this off by saying, like, I'm saying you need to decide for yourself whether or not these themes and subjects are something that you can handle. Like, I don't believe in, censorship. Like, that's not what trigger warnings are about. They're about saying, you know yourself best. Honestly, if it were me and someone had told me, I would not have seen the movie. I'm not saying I regret seeing it, but I just would have been like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Yes. So we might get into content later, but right now I want to focus on the movie itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think as far as the acting goes, that Nicole Kidman gave one of the best realist performances in the movie, and I could feel her pain in that movie from the way she portrayed.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the young men, because the whole point of the movie is that these young men are in a conversion camp. I thought the young men in the movie just nailed the acting almost to the point. I mean, like I said, I was crying during the movie, but the young men in this movie are so emotionally pained, and you don't know if that's pulling from prior experience or just good acting,
Mm-hmm.
but you were there connected, every emotion with every character, and that's the best thing I had to say about the movie is, like, I was feeling emotions, one, from the content, but two, just because I felt like these were the people living these stories, and they had really kind of done their homework and paid homage to the actual individuals who were struggling with these issues. And that's a great sign of respect to me, I think, because they really wanted to capture how people were feeling.
Yeah, and I want to circle back to that too when we talk about content. I will say on the acting front, I had to have an internal chuckle at the thought of who would you find to portray someone who's lived an incredibly hard life and looks like an ex-con and, guitarist from, it was Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers,
Mm-hmm.
who played the, like, tatted up ex-con character.
I did not.
Yeah. So I was just like, someone who looks like they've had a hard life. You either have to go with someone who's legitimately an ex-con or somebody who was a guitarist in a
Fun fact
band.
we learned here.
But he did a really good job, actually. So I was really impressed. I don't know anything about his personal life, if he's connected to the material in any way. Nor do I care. You don't need to be
Right.
to give a good performance.
I was disappointed with Russell Crowe's performance.
Okay. Really?
I'm a huge Russell Crowe fan. I've seen almost every Russell Crowe movie, I think, and I'm a huge fan. And I felt like this was a part for him. It wasn't a role. And I felt like he acted in it, and he read the script, and he had staged emotions. But I didn't feel like he delivered me anything other than a bland Hallmark movie performance.
Okay. I don't feel quite so negatively. And again, from like a film history perspective, I really believe this was a very early recommendation in one of the podcasts, and I don't remember which one. He made one of the landmark films in gay cinema. So I was like, nice to see him kind of circle back to something like this. Like, he kind of went on and did all kinds of different roles, and I'm like, it's good to see him still part of, like...
And I think that was probably the problem for me. I've seen him be so versatile and so vulnerable in these other positions that I didn't believe that this was his character.
Okay.
And maybe he didn't believe it, because if he doesn't believe it, then I can't believe it. And that's just my opinion. I just felt like it was very, like... You know how Russell Crowe has those soft, tender moments?
Mm-hmm.
But then he never, he just tried to be too hard. He's a preacher in this movie, so already he's trying to be a lot of this big church personality and then hate on his son as well. And I just didn't, even in their ending monologue together with his son, I was just kind of like left wanting more from Russell Crowe in that situation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's why I think Nicole Kidman overshadowed, because if you didn't know, this is based in a true story, everybody. He, the author of this, the kid who is portrayed in this movie, is authored a book, Boy Erased, which I recommend you read that. But phenomenal writing from this kid. And we just have less than what like the book portrayed the father as. And what
so that might be partly it too. Like you have that basis of comparison that I don't have. And Lucas Hedges, I thought he did a very good job.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Makeup artists should be given some credit for this movie too, because the swollen, sunken eyes of every kid in this, you can physically see pain in their faces, and that is not to be captured by anything other than like the makeup artist in this movie. And Nicole Kidman doesn't look aged, but she looks worn. And I really enjoy that about her character.
She also just her whole aesthetic was really fun. I loved her like ridiculous French manicured nails. And the art direction of their house was like so spot on as people who had like decorated in the 90s and not since then. I will say this again. I have shamed older actresses for trying to do ridiculous things to disguise their age. It was really nice to see Nicole Kidman.
Pretty raw.
Yeah, I mean,
emotionally,
she's a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
Who is not 20 anymore, and that's completely okay. And seeing her face as it is at her age is delightful.
And even her hands are not meant to look young. You know how, like, I hate when you can tell some, like, a stand-in or something with somebody else's hand. You're like, why? Why? Just put it in their hand.
Yeah.
Old people have wrinkles.
We age. It happens. I mean, not me, but other people.
I thought most of the acting was really great. Like I said, Russell Crowe left a little more to be desired for me. But I don't know if I had been casting those parts. I was thinking today who else I would have cast in any of those parts.
Americans. Like, and then I was like, oh, the director's Australian. I thought it was really weird that he picked not one, but two Australians.
Well, also maybe it's easier for an Australian to play this role because it wouldn't hit so close to home for an actual American actor. A little disconnect because, you know, they don't deal with heavy religion like this in Australia.
Okay.
So a little easy on the actors themselves, because I was reading some of the, when they were filming, basically some of just the information while they were filming, and they had on-site therapists while they were filming, and they had Nicole Kidman, you know, debrief with her, and the kid especially, they debriefed them after almost every scene because this kid was like so heavy invested into his character and so well prepared for it, they said. And the thought that goes into that, and you always have, you know, a on-site psychologist, don't get me wrong, but they are like on the set with them, ready to be like, take a breath, remember who you are, remember this is a role. And that speaks a lot to what the kid really probably went through emotionally, and he's the majority of the screen time. Let's not get that wrong. So just overtly, I think it's hard not to take on part of those roles. I mean, we can look back to see, you know, stuff like Heath Ledger and the Joker. And I think maybe it's a little easier if you have not grown up around Southern Baptists. That's why maybe Americans weren't cast, because you can disconnect a little and be like, this isn't really something I know. It's a role I step into.
Yeah. I mean, I only hate when they play great Americans. So I honestly have no problem with a Welshman playing Dick Cheney. Doesn't bother me at all. Martin Luther King, on the other hand, kind of PO'd. But, yeah, so I thought the directing was, you know, competent. I don't have
It didn't stand out to me as anything spectacular.
No.
I thought the way the movie was shot with a dark filtered lens, so good for, like, the first 40 minutes. Like, everything is basically, if you're looking through, like, a telescope, kind of see only a circle and a blur around. That's what this was shot in. And it was great because it portrayed, like, this kid going through this dark time and everything. But then halfway through the movie, I'm just like, just give me a clear shot of anything would be great. That was, like, something, how it was shot. There was nothing to be wanted more of because it wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. It's just kind of like, The content itself overweighs much of everything you're watching. And that's why when we're watching movies like this, it's hard to really evaluate without rewatching the movie again.
Yeah, and again, I mean, competent is fine. Like, you certainly wouldn't have wanted this sort of direction to overwhelm the film. I really like the score.
No, I was good.
I was like, the music was really good.
And it was there's this one scene where it's, you know, all music, but the kid is talking about one of the participants, the wrong word, one of the individuals who was at the camp. committed suicide, and the police are starting to interview the star and like, did you know this kid? What happened? And the dad is finally starting to realize that this camp that he sent him to is actually not a good thing. And the score during that whole scene, and he walks upstairs, ignores dad, and dad walks upstairs to chase him. And then the kid just like shuts the door in his face, and the music to it, like palpable how well the music captured the tension in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I agree with you. I thought the score was on point. It wasn't overwhelming. I know you and I have talked about sometimes the score gets overwhelming. But the whole thing, I went and looked at the album later, and there's actually like a huge number, like 20-something songs in the score, and you're like, wow, didn't even catch all of those.
Right.
Which means they're really well subtly done in.
Yeah. I would say that my biggest complaint from the direction standpoint was just the like fast forward in time and all that stuff was really clunky, and they kind of didn't know how to end the movie.
Yeah.
In fact, like the final moment was pretty poor.
I thought the reverse. So the scene before the end of the movie so at the end of the movie, he's living in New York, his best gay life. He's drinking alcohol with his friends, having a good time. And then the end scene is him talking to his dad saying, you never did anything for me. I'm about to publish this huge article. They're going to ask me to publish a book. I thought those could have been flipped.
Now you're saying it, I totally agree.
Like, have that conversation with dad, be miserable, and then show him living an amazing life. And I'm sure, did you stay? The
end roll was the best.
The end roll.
I laughed so hard. I was like, thank you, I needed that.
The end roll stay. I mean, this is one of those I'm not going to actually spoil because I think it is most potent, fantastic ending to an end credit roll I've seen in a long time.
Yeah. So I did want to, there's a lot to unpack about gay conversion therapy, and one's relationships with one's parents. Which would you like to tackle first?
First of all, for our listeners, I would like to self-disclose and self-identify. I am bisexual. I don't know, you probably picked that up on some of the other podcasts, but if you didn't know, I am bisexual. And I don't
think we've called anybody hot.
No, well, not yet. Call a lot of people hot, so there's that. But I did grow up in Missouri
Missouri? Or Missouri?
Missouri. Still far enough north to be Missouri.
Okay.
In a small farming town where my father was a preacher in a very strict missionary Baptist religious household. So I want to set that preference because a lot of what you might hear me say in regards to parents and conversion camps and religion may sound harsher than it could. And I'm not trying to downplay anybody's religion, but I did grow through some of these experiences. So just take everything I may say more with a grain of salt, but also
but lived experience,
more spice as well,
which is why you're here. Which I'm like, that couldn't be more opposite. Like suburbs of New York City, like, no religion, solidly straight, lived experience.
Yeah, let's start with religion to relations with parents before we start unpacking gay conversion, because I think that sets the tone for gay conversion therapy.
Okay, so ultimately this movie, I'm curious to know how it resonated with you. This movie had ultimately a very hopeful message about how to navigate this situation with the parents. So it ends up being that his mom is ultimately there for him and actually walks a really good but almost impossibly difficult line between being a good mother to her son and being a good wife to her husband. Like, she manages to do both and support her son, and you don't feel like she's a terrible person on either side. Which I thought, seeing it modeled, I was like, this is really interesting. Like, I don't know anybody who's ever done this.
And I thought that's why, Nicole Kidman portraying the character, the actual mother's experience, did very similar. The mother the mom always had problems with the religion and gay problem when her son came out. He was kind of forced out, so I was almost about to say discovered to be gay, but when her son
outed, right?
Outed,
he was outed.
full outed. We'll
Yeah.
get into that in a second. But the mom here knows something's going on and knows it's not okay that he's going to this camp and like really pushes, and she's like, if anything's wrong, let me know. Like, I want to take care of you. And I thought from the very beginning, she, you know, I didn't expect her to be that forceful in the movie. You know, kind of in the book, we see her as more of a passive lead up to where she is very forceful at the end of the
Right. I didn't read the book. I did read one of the articles he published in advance of the book, which talked about his mom, like, legitimately having that scene where she takes him out and it's like, no. Why did I agree to this? What are even your qualifications? So
And that was so powerful to me. But the most powerful thing is the scene right after that where she calls the father and talks to the father. And then she sits down with her son and she says, your father wants you to go back. And you just see this kid shut down mentally, physically. He shuts down. And mom is like, but I told him we'd be home later. And to me, like there, I'm even tearing up right now. Like that was so powerful in that movie because it's the first time this kid felt validated by his mother. Even when she took him out of the place, he couldn't feel validated because he still had fear of going back to this place. And that's the parenting. You know, you could make mistakes as a parent. That's okay.
I mean, gay, not gay, whatever your situation is, like, it doesn't matter. If you've ever looked in the face of a parent and known they're going to choose their spouse over you, like, that is a deeply powerful moment. Like I said, in my own life, in other people's lives, you know, no matter how, you know, people talk about a mother's instinct, like, the fact of the matter is, you know, woman after woman, or parent after parent, I should say, like, stays with an abuser, even though they hit their kids. Like, you know what I mean? Like, to see her, like, like, he doesn't think she's going to choose him. Like, until the moment she does, like, that is his fear. And I related to that really personally as well. And to see her to find a way to say, I choose you both, was really powerful.
But in a way that was supportive. And the rest of the movie,
Like, it was a legitimately, I choose you both. It wasn't a fake, I choose you because I'm too afraid to stand up to my husband. Like, it was real. She managed to walk that line. And like I said, going into it, I'd never seen anything like that modeled before. Like, I didn't know that was a thing that someone could do.
And I think it speaks very highly as the rest of the movie moves on. Her and her son still talk. They joke. They laugh. They have a great relationship after that. And this kid is forgiven his mother, but can't forgive his father. Not for sending him to the camp. Can't forgive his father because his father is not willing to make any sort of change. This kid, his ending monologue, I thought his ending monologue was great. The dad's part, a little shit, but a little bad. Excuse me, edit that out. A little bad, but the kid's monologue at the end is like, his whole message is like, God knows I tried to change, to not be gay for you because that's what you wanted. And I realized this is who I am. But I did try to change. Right. You're not even trying right now, Dad. You're not trying to change. And if it's who you are that you can't change, that's fine. All I'm asking you to do is try. And I thought that was like the ending pivotal monologue for this kid who has been through, I'm going to say hell and back, to realize that. And he says, he comes to a point where he's like, I get it. We're either done. We can be cordial to each other, say hi at functions and be respectful. And that can be our relationship. Or we can try to have a relationship.
Like a real one, yeah.
But it's time to understand, you know, poop or get off the pot. Yep. You're either going to try and be my father or you're only going to be my dad. Father being a emotional connection, dad being my biological parent.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was a very hopeful and true to life, like that is the story message, and I was just sort of blown away. Like, I've never seen the parents change.
No, and honestly,
I've never seen that.
This is something, especially middle America, everybody in South, especially, we can say South to Midwest, because the coast really don't have problems with this.
Never.
It's not something that parents change on very frequently. Parents disown their children,
right.
Kick them out of the house, disown them in terms of their name. never contacted them again, drive them, tell them to kill themselves, like all of these things. Like, parents don't often change. And I want to highlight this. And I think everyone who's listening right now, I really want you to think about someone who has come out as LGBT, or maybe it doesn't even have to be an LGBT person, or somebody who was disowned by their parents for whatever reason. Their parents and them disagreed. I want you to reach out to them and really be like, I'll probably never understand exactly what it was like, but I'm here to support and I will be your family. Because so many times, so many people don't have these families nowadays. And that's a harsh reality. I mean, it's 2019 almost. And here we are still with parents who are putting their kids out, making them homeless at as young of age of 12, or telling them to kill themselves, or telling them never to speak to them again. And to me, that's not something that I can ever tolerate nor see as a normal human behavior. And we've started to see uprisings in the rest of the world where this is still becoming an issue. Tanzania just hired their first gay task force to eliminate gay people. And Chechnya, people are being thrown off roofs because they're gay. Like, India, it's still punishable by death. I mean, there are so many places in the world where being LGBTQ is so hard. But here in America, we sometimes overlook because we're not being thrown off roofs. And I know that sounds so insincere, but trust me when I say, like, the emotional damage you do to a kid is sometimes the worst. And all I want is for people to realize that they have family and you are supported and that I'm here for you. And I know Nicole is here for you.
Yeah, come on in. I also think, though, to the difference in our backgrounds, like, I think that, sadly, that there is whatever strides that gay people have made, there is a younger generation of trans people who are really in it, for lack of a better word, who are really reliving all of the worst sort of experiences, where the culture's moved on and there's been greater tolerance and acceptance of gay people. Now trans people are unfortunately, that didn't catch up to them. And I think it is, but stories like these are still occurring in America. And I think it is hard for those of us who have, always lived in a more tolerant place to really understand what it's like.
And I think this is a good time to move into gay conversion camps. And this is a hard-hitting fact, so brace yourself that in 36 states, it is still legal in the United States to have gay conversion therapy camps. That is an ungodly amount of places where kids can go be submitted to electroshock therapy, emotional abuse, physical abuse, ice bath abuse. I mean, like, the list goes on and on and on. And it blows my mind that there are 36 states that still allow this to happen. And guess where the 14 states are located, everybody? And to literally know people who have been subjected to these camps. I have never personally been subjected to these camps. I had a later coming out story in life, so I was out of my parents' house by the time I came out for fear of one of these camps. I mean, to be honest, like, I don't know what would happen to me if I came out when I was young. But there are kids today who don't have that luxury and who are sent to these camps. And these camps, this movie is actually what I would call, if you had to rank it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst camp you had to go to, and 0 being like Martha Stewart and lockup, this camp was maybe a 2. There are camps out there that are much worse, that are subjecting kids to physical, emotional torture to make sure that they don't be, and I'm putting this in quotations, don't be gay, because they believe it's a choice. And that's the rooted religious belief of these camps, that it is a choice. You are choosing to do this. We just have to make it so you don't want to choose this again. So they will physically, which is approved in, I think, 28 of the 36 states for use of some sort of basic torture, which includes electroshock therapy.
Yeah, I was really eye-opening. So a few years ago when Michelle Bachmann was running on the Republican ticket, her husband worked in gay conversion therapy. And so one of her husband's like former clients like wrote this article about how she kind of quote unquote like overcame being gay. And you're reading this article and she's so sincere, like it is dripping with sincerity, but it's ludicrous. Like the thing I remember most is like she talks about how she's not gay anymore. She suppressed all her urges. Like, it used to be, like, every time she passed, like, a cute girl on the street, like, she'd turn around, you know, and check out the girl's ass. And now, like, she doesn't do that anymore. And I'm like, the thing is, you're still gay. Like, I'm sorry, I'm straight. I don't even have the urge to turn around and check out a girl's ass because I'm straight. Like, you're not gay anymore. You just don't act on it. Like, it was just so crazy town because she was, like, totally convinced. She's like, I'm totally feminine now. I wear, like, makeup, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, but you're still attracted to women. So you're still gay. Like, this has changed nothing. Like, what are you talking? Like, and that she couldn't see it. It was just, it's a really, I'm going to post it to the show notes. It's a very weird read. As is the one, did you know about, this couple, they were like internet famous by him coming out and saying that he was gay, but they were really religious, so he married this woman.
Oh, no, I haven't seen that.
And then, I'll post this too, then they finally were like, it's like, oh, it's amazing, you did it. And then finally, their marriage couldn't survive it. And they were like, you know what, I want somebody who like loves me and wants me, like, and desires me, and both of us deserve that. And F the religion, and this sucks for our kids, but, like, this actually isn't a workable scenario. Like, it's not.
And I think one thing the movie missed out on was giving enough voice to women who go through these conversion camps. I think it's so easy to see men go to these camps. And we do have a small piece of the woman in this movie.
Yeah, we have a woman.
But I think what's under...
And it doesn't need to be all things for all people, though.
No, it doesn't. But I think there's a lot of times that when we talk about gay conversion camp therapies, most of the examples that rise to mind in media and social interaction is when men are sent to conversion camps. And I want to give... There's a lot of women, especially in the 90s, because women were more accepting of their sexuality in the 90s than men were, because men were coming off the AIDS crisis. And not that women aren't plagued by the same AIDS crisis and have gone through the same struggles. It's less likely that a woman went
It's almost impossible for a woman to give another woman AIDS.
Yeah.
So, like, science, that's just science.
So the AIDS crisis of being gay in the 80s really affected men. And I think that's when we saw the surge and gay conversion camps really start to set up in the early 90s after the AIDS crisis has kind of started to figure out some of the fixings. But I just want to take a moment to realize that women were there too. And women had it a lot harder because most conversion camps require women to be in conversion camps, you're not allowed to masturbate, you're not allowed to think about impure thoughts, you're not allowed to do anything basically other than structured rules. But women have more indiscretion, women have less discretion, not indiscretion, I misspoke, because they were physically watched when they would urinate, because women could touch themselves versus men, we know what it takes to get a man to touch himself other than pleasureful. It has to be erect. Women don't. And so women would be watched. And so, like, just think about the boundary crossing of, like, women were allowed to wear bras, but they had to be, like, they had to put on their bra in front of somebody so they wouldn't be touching their nipples and stuff like that. And so, like, I just want to, like, blow it out of your mind. Like, people are still doing this today, and that women have it another level.
Yeah.
Of their body is not in their control because they're women. And
that is religion, yeah.
Easier to manipulate a woman's body. I put easy in quotations, sorry. So I just want to make sure that piece is known that, like, there is that about gay conversion camps too. But let's get to the heart of gay conversion for, like, 2 minutes, everybody. And that is, gay conversion is set up by people who want to pray the gay, preach the gay, hit the gay, get the gay out of a human. And these camps are set up by, my opinion, money fucking driven people who want money to tell people that they're wrong and who want to hit kids. I think there's some special ring of like hell, if you believe in that, for the sadists that run these camps. Because one, they're either so suppressed themselves that they have no idea what they're doing, but they were told this is the only way to succeed. Two, they actually like causing pain to people. Or three, they are so emotionally blocked from everything that's happening around them that they don't know what they're doing. And so they're doing as a reaction. And a lot of times this is the same kind of behavior, grooming behavior we see in someone who has been sexually assaulted before. And we don't know the studies because people who run these camps are not admitting to studies if they've ever been sexually assaulted or not. But I want to these camps are awful places. And it's the closest thing I think we have currently to some of the past camps. I don't want to make the correlation to Jewish internment camps. That's not what I'm making. But camps of oppressed people before that we have seen in history. And treating people wrongly and torturing them until they just will do whatever you want because they have no emotional or physical means to do otherwise. So they agree until you just hear what you want.
I think the best analog, actually, since you kind of brought it up, would be like, quote unquote, hysteria. Like how women were sent to mental asylums for not being the way they wanted women to
Absolutely.
be. But I think, so I'm with you in the whole, even drug recovery is like a whole scam full of, there's people who are snake oil salesmen there. But I think what the movie portrayed really well and sort of the third rail of this gay conversion therapy is the people who just legitimately want it to work. The people who want so badly
to fit in, to feel loved, to be a part of their family. And to not lose
their religion, to their family and their religion. I know many, many religious people. I'm not one of them. But, religion has its benefits. And it can be a joyful, wonderful thing in your life. And to have to turn your back on that, I can't imagine how hard that would be. And to have someone give you this easy answer. Like, for any of us who have struggled, again, for any reason, right? For who've been different or weird in a way that didn't fit in. If somebody said to me, to my 13-year-old self, we can send you to a camp that's going to make you unweird. You're going to be normal. You're going to be just like everybody else. And you will totally fit in. I almost guarantee you I would have signed up for that camp. 13-year-old Nicole would have been like, yes.
And that's what's hard.
Make me fit.
These camps are convoluted and not explained before you get there that this is what's good for your family. This will help you fit in again. These feelings will pass. It's not your fault. And then they get there and they are prisoners of these places. And the movie portrayed a really good, you can come out, basically parents are pulling their kids out of these camps continuously. That's not the real world, everybody. Unfortunately, we saw 2 kids be pulled out of these camps. That's unfortunately not the real world. Parents send their kids to these camps and don't want to come pick them up, don't want to come talk to them. Most of them...
Until they're fixed.
Most of them are actually inpatient. This was before inpatient really became a thing in the late 90s for all sorts of things. But inpatient really took off if you look at the literature. And then late 90s for drug and alcohol, for hospitalization, for whatever. And gay conversion therapy too. But these camps basically hold you prisoner and telling you that emotional abuse... Your parents won't love you. You're not right yet.
It's emotional abuse. They take that desire, that natural human desire to fit in and to be, quote unquote, like everybody else. And they use that to prey upon incredibly vulnerable people. And it's just so hard. It is so hard to see somebody struggle with something that they can't change and to see them be tortured for it. I commend, part of the mission of the movie and the book is to eradicate gay conversion therapy.
Well, and I'm looking for a little bit of statistics right here, but the percentages I've seen so far is members who go to gay conversion therapy are 7 times more likely 8 times more likely, according to the HRC, 8 times more likely to commit suicide
I believe
after being a gay conversion, 6 times more likely to report high levels of depression, 3 times more likely to use illegal drugs, and 3 times more likely to be at a high risk for HIV or STDs because of their sexually promiscuous behaviors while being guilt at the same time.
I don't want anyone ever to have to give up their family or their religion for who they are.
I want you to do what makes you happy.
But I know that that is a real choice
And,
that a lot of people face.
and I'm going to just be honest. I came from a place where I thought religion was a good place for me to be. I grew up, my dad was a preacher. I grew up in religion my whole life. I was around religious people. Every one of my family friends were all religious. We all blah, blah, blah. I've seen the ways that man-made religion has literally killed individuals all around the world. But here in America, we have a special breed of Baptist, I would say, or strong, snake-rattling people are an extreme, right? Speaking in tongues, yada, yada, yada. But I've seen Baptists, in my own experience, be one of the worst to human beings. And my experience with my parents is not for this podcast. And if you have questions, you can always reach out to me. I'm very open and frank about it. But it's not about my parents in this. It's about how religion, people who were my best friends were then not allowed to talk to me, not allowed to look at me on a street, not allowed to acknowledge I had ever existed in their minds. It's not just me it affects when religion... Sorry, this isn't about me. It's not another person that religion affects. It's everyone they've ever come into contact with. People who I'd worked for, babysit their kids, all of a sudden have to assume that I am a pedophilic, rapist.
Yeah, of course.
Gay
and pedophile is synonymous.
So, and
just ask Roy Moore.
These are people who, I grew up with, and I watched their kids, and I babysat, and all their kids have reached out and be like, I never thought that, don't think it's wrong, whatever. And so I have hope for the new generation of religion, but I'm wondering what point, especially now, as it seems like right now is the tipping point here in America, and religion is at the forefront of that. And it seems like the people who are standing their ground and being like, everything is wrong, we need morals, is the religious people who are not practicing their own religions by definition. You're not seeing people who are Jewish, Hindu, Muslim, gay, you're not seeing those people's rights taken care of. You're seeing white males come into these places and destroy people's lives because they think they are doing whatever reason, mentally charged, socially charged, politically charged, I don't care. Those are the 3 reasons it's going to be. But these are white men hurting people. But what's hurting people worse is when you don't stand up and say, I love my neighbor. I don't care who they are. I don't care what they look like. I don't care what they do in their own home, as long as they're not hurting another person.
I agree. And again, I feel like, while not religious myself, I did grow up around religious people. And to say to somebody, you can't have your religion and be who you are, that actually is a lot to take away from someone.
And I would never want to strip anyone of their identity. And if religion is part of your identity, I respect, acknowledge, and will accept that.
I'm just sorry you can't have it both ways.
All I'm asking is you do the same to people who are different than you.
Yeah. weighty stuff.
I told you at the beginning, this was a heavy movie, everybody.
Yeah, I made it through better than I thought. So this is a hard one to give a social impact score to.
To me, it's not.
Okay, what would you give it?
Scale of, we do 1 to 10 here,
yeah.
Everybody. I'm going to give it a solid 8. And this is why. I think that it's relevant as we approach the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. I think that movies like this are important as Call Me By Your Name, if not more, to show Call Me By Your Name could be a fun, energetic romance. And this is the real truth that we're living as Boy Erased. I think it makes us think. I think both of us have had very strong reactions, and I think cultural movies do that, cultural, social impact. But most of all, I think the impact is so there because if you walk away from this movie feeling nothing, and then I think you're the problem. and I hate to be so frank as that, but if you didn't feel anything for this movie, of the multiple extravagant issues that showed up in this movie, whether it was homosexuality, religion, gay conversion camps, parental relationships, sexual assault, like, if you didn't walk away with any feelings from this movie, I highly suggest you, like, go see a therapist, because...
Yeah, or you've led the most charmed life, and everyone you know has led the most charmed life.
But even if you live the most charmed life, you should still walk away with some impact of, that hasn't happened to me, but I can still...
Oh, yeah, empathy is huge, which is why I had a nervous breakdown. Even though, like I said, thankfully, it wasn't personal. It doesn't matter that I haven't been sexually assaulted myself. To see it happen to somebody else, this is still pretty freaking traumatizing. Yeah, I'm kind of hovering around 7 and 8. I agree with you. This is just, I agree, like, putting it in that context, we've had a lot of Isn't It Fun to Be Gay movies. We really have. And those are good. I'm not slamming those. I'm not saying that there isn't a place for them. It should be and is fun to be gay. Like, great. But I think a wake-up call as to, like, hey, it's not always fun, and kids are still struggling, and there are still real issues. All right, recommendations?
Sure, I've got 2 recommendations, everybody. One, well, actually 3, because I think you should read Boy Erased just because of what Boy Erased is.
Good one, yes.
But I also have 2 recommendations. One for maybe those who identify as LGBTQ. It's more geared, the book itself I'm about to recommend is more geared towards gay men, but I think the process could apply to everyone. And it is called The Velvet Rage by Alan Downs. The full title of the book you can find on Amazon is Velvet Rage, Overcoming the Pain of Growing Up Gay in a Straight Man's World. And like I said, for all my LGBTQ individuals out there, I think this is a great book, but it doesn't matter if you're flamboyant, muscular, masculine, feminine, all these characteristics we put in the gay community. It's a book about self-acceptance and how you don't need approval from your past life and how you don't need approval from the current cultural norm either. My third recommendation is Prayers for Bobby. It is the original, I think, religious movie. Sigourney Weaver, everybody. And you want to talk about one of the most amazing movies. It's a Hallmark movie, so prepare yourself for sappiness. Prayers for Bobby, everybody, I'd recommend just because at the end of the movie, the mother finds a way to have religion and also be one of the biggest P-flag parents of LGBTQ youth advocate.
So you kind of previewed, actually, my recommendation way back in the tail end of the 90s. There was a dark comedy about gay conversion therapy, and we all know I love a dark comedy, called But I'm a Cheerleader. So about a girl, a lesbian, who gets forced into gay conversion therapy. So we hope you enjoyed this episode of Movies That Matter. Leave us a review, please, please, please. Recommend us to your friends. Check out our website, moviesthatmatterpodcast.com. As always, I'll provide links to things we talked about so you can read those things and look up the recommendations. Leave a comment on our Facebook page. Talk to us on Twitter at moviesmatterpod. And we will be back telling you what movie we're going to see next Thursday. And remember, movies matter.
And you do too.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yay.